Hey, you guys. So today I want to talk to you about a term that I have coined, the I should complex. And I'm going to talk about this in two examples, one being an everyday life example, and one being an example from my whole spiritual awakening journey. So the I should complex, what is it? So first, it starts out with understanding that your body is like a giant energy sensor. Before your brain can compute, situations, your body can feel energy, right? Just like when you walk into a room, the classic example that you can feel if there's like a good vibe or a not so good vibe for you. Um, something like where someone says to you, oh hey, do you want to come out with us on Friday night to this bar or whatever? Before your brain can like understand what's happening, your body is going to either be like, yes, I love that for me, or recoil back and be like, 100% I do not want to do that, I do not want to be around those people or whatever, right? So you could probably think of a time in your life often where your body has just been like, oh god, please no, I don't want to do that. But then you could also think of those times where you felt it and then you say yes anyway. You go against your intuition, your intuition, right? Um and there's a few different ways that this can like come about. So number one, in everyday life, I relate a lot of things to fitness because fitness is my background, and so you're going to hear a lot of that here. Okay. um for a while I was in a ultra marathon running era of sorts. I did a whole bunch of 50-mile ultra marathons and somewhere around that distance, and doing tons and tons of running and totally neglecting heavy strength training, things like that, because like everything else in my life, I do things in cycles where I am like all about running and I want nothing to do with strength training. Or there have been cycles where I'm like, I only want to do yoga and walking, and I want nothing to do with everything else. Um, like I said, it is all the same in every area of my life. And so I'm used to it by now. But it took me a long time to like realize that pattern. Um, but I'd be like, when I was kind of at the height of my distance running moment, I would feel guilty that I would wake up and be like, I don't really feel like going running. I don't want to do it. It's going to take like, I'm going to have to be out there for like 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And yeah, there are times like obviously in life where we have to do things that we don't want to do necessarily, like vacuuming, laundry, right? Doing the dishes, things like that. Like those are everyday like quality of life things, you might not feel like taking a shower, but you're like, I should take a shower. um but I would make my feel myself feel so guilty for not wanting to go and do running for a bunch of hours. I was like, I should. But when you say I should, it's usually not in the context of like, I'm so proud of myself, this is amazing. It's full of like self-deprecating, like I'm not meeting a standard that I put on myself or that other people have put on me. I should XYZ, right? Um and an area where this has affected me in the whole spiritual awakening front is, like everything else, when I found out that I had the ability to communicate with spirit, I was like, I have to practice 5, 6, at least 5 days a week, if not six, maybe seven would be great. Um, and because I was like, well, I should practice, because if I don't, it came from a place of fear, like so many other things, right? Um, I was fearful that if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And yes, in some cases, like uh, physically speaking, in like the fitness arena, if you don't squat for a while, you're going to lose strength. But the thing about like the spiritual circle, in spiritual awakening, what's meant for you is not going to be lost by you. Once you discover that you have an ability, whatever that ability is, knowledge is power. So you know it now, and you can't lose something that is literally already inside of you. Um, Somebody just asked me the other day, oh well, like do you have other people, do you know other people in your family or friends who have the ability? And I was like, well, the thing is, everyone to a point has the ability. It's just whether you tap into it or not. um but once you know that you have it, like it's there, right? And where was I going with this? Hold on. So the whole idea of like why I was practicing the amount that I was practicing is I was fearful that I would lose it. Because it's so human. The second that you get like you've gone a long time without money in your savings account, and then you finally get money in your savings account, and then an expense comes up and you're like, oh, I don't want to let go of that money now. Like that, it hurts. You don't want to unclench your fist because you feel like if you open it even just a little bit, it's going to run through your fingers and you won't get it back. It's all self-preservation, and it makes sense if you think about it. Like, you take yourself out of the situation, you can look at it like pretty objectively, and it's easy to understand. But so I was operating out of fear for well over a year, and I would feel guilty on the days that I didn't practice. um, and so when I would go in and practice, I found myself getting things wrong. I was going into like my brain rather than the whole point is to take yourself out of the picture so that you can tap in to like other like higher frequencies. But I was so like operating out of fear that I kept going into my own head and mixing up the information and getting no's and finding myself like really discouraged. um and so the whole I should be practicing blah blah blah, I because I do nothing in moderation, I was like, that's it. I'm going to prove to myself that I don't need to practice 6 days a week. I don't have to, I shouldn't have to practice for fear of losing it. So I made it a thing where I went like cold turkey, and I went without practicing for like 4 or 5 months, just to prove to myself, like, I know that this is the lesson I'm supposed to be learning. I am supposed to be learning to not operate out of fear, because you can accomplish things when you are motivated by fear, but you will not accomplish all that there is to be gained when you're operating out of fear versus trust, right? So when I did finally go back, I was like, okay, I'll dip my toes in. I made it a challenge for myself. Like, I'm going to practice once a week. Let me just schedule one practice session. And I found out, lo and behold, I didn't lose the ability. And that's because in that interim period of me deciding that I was going to take a little break from practicing like the psychic mediumship, that I was tuning into my intuition and to my guides all that time. And so without really knowing it, I was developing in my intuition, into my sensitivity to spirit, to energy. And once I came back and started practicing here and there, I actually realized that I had developed other abilities. New things were coming online that I hadn't had before when I was stressing out and scheduling all these practices and things like that. And it just took that decision to like pry my own hand open, as it were, and be like, all right, spirit, prove to me that I have nothing to be afraid about. Prove to me that I don't need to make myself miserable in order to gain anything along this spiritual awakening path, because it can't be that hard. I've learned that one of the main lessons that I needed to learn here on earth is that not all things require that hard, like head down, eyes forward, like the grind, the hustle. Success isn't always contingent upon how miserable you make yourself in the beginning stages. And almost everything I've done has been extreme. And like my poor family, my poor husband, the things that they've endured of me putting myself through like misery just to prove that like I can do this or I could do that. And there's something to be said for like pushing ourselves really, really hard and seeing what we're capable of. But I find like in spirituality, it's sometimes it's the real flex is how much you can relax and trust and like rest into a sense of ease and understanding that everything is going to work out for you. That's been the hardest thing that I've come up against so far. Is I, for a while, humanized this entire process and thought, well, just like everything else, if you put in the hours and work really, really hard and push yourself and do all the things that you don't want to do the way that we've been conditioned, like then I'll reap the reward. I can't speak, sorry. So it's interesting. I am curious to hear, put it in the comments below, where you have or currently are experiencing this little tug of war in your life, whether it's in real life or in your spiritual awakening journey. It's interesting, like once you start checking yourself on your why, you start being like, well, am I doing these things for the right reasons? Like, or am I doing these things because I'm afraid of something? So it's definitely like something to chew on and think about. And the second that you become aware of it, or even just start questioning yourself, it's like your awareness, your consciousness is raised. And it's little subtle shifts like that that make a huge difference over time.